Some very good news indeed if you're a Tau Battlesuit commander today. Battlesuits can shoot in combat, they've regained access to a move shoot move mechanic, and they've got a couple of nice upgrades on their guns. Hello and welcome back to Warspets Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel, where today we're talking Tau, and we're going to be going through the rather big preview that Games Workshop just gave for the faction, focusing on all of their Battlesuit units. There's quite a bit going on with this one. We'll talk about their firing in combat special rules first, then go on to their buffed weapons, their more useful Wargear, and a couple of their unique stratagems after that. So in general, 9th edition hasn't been the kindest edition to Tau Battlesuits. In 8th edition they lost any access to things like move shoot move, which they had in 7th edition and before. And then at the start of 9th edition, due to a change in the fly keyword, they lost the ability to fall back and shoot. It's not exactly great news for some of the most iconic Tau units around. Their standard crisis suits and things could in theory just be shot down just by managing to charge them with something, and it meant that the units had to be either super expendable, or you had to support a big unit of them with something like Montcar from Farsight to allow a really big unit to fall back and still shoot. You just can't really afford to have your main damage dealers locked up so easily. Now though, perhaps the biggest change today is that Battlesuits can now make attacks with ranged weapons even when their units in engagement range of enemy units. That's quite a big deal as it goes. It's basically handing them a rule that's very similar to the big guns never tire special rule for vehicles, but it's even better than that because you don't get any penalty for shooting with heavy weapons. Units like broadsides are really going to like that, and I'm going to guess that this might trump the big guns never tire rule on the really big suits, but I guess we'll have to wait and see for that. As best I can tell though, this still doesn't look like it'll work for shooting blast weapons in combat. There's nothing on this rule that forbids it, but I believe the restriction is baked into the blast weapon special rule in the core rulebook, so you still probably won't be able to fire blast weapons into engagement range. It's going to make your opponent have to think a lot harder before trying to tag Battlesuits in melee. If they're just going to shoot the unit dead that engaged them, there might not be quite as much point, though I think in general this might be a little bit weaker than fall back and shoot for the unit, as it means that if you do choose to remain in combat and fire to full effect, you are then at risk of the opponent slapping you again in melee in your own turn, which if you haven't managed to kill enough of them, then it could mean that you get a lot of dead crisis suits that you might well have avoided if you had just fallen back. It also could be an issue if your opponent tags you with something really massive. Your crisis suits might well be able to shoot quite a lot of them dead in close combat, but it means that the rest of the Tau army won't be able to help out with them, as they're prevented from shooting the unit by your own suits. It's definitely a powerful extra ability, but I think there's going to be a fair few occasions when falling back is the best choice, particularly if you're using that carry-on tactical philosophy, the one that allows you to fall back and shoot from turn 3 onwards. Still though, it's a really interesting rule, and it's certainly not just for crisis suits. It could be interesting on Battlesuit commanders, who could be really intimidating to charge if you know that they're going to be able to fire Overwatch, and then maybe fire again if you don't kill them in combat. Stealth suits with all those burst cannons, and broadsides with their high yield missile pods and things. I think in general it's probably a good change that just tagging them in combat isn't going to do all that much harm anymore compared with actually killing them. Otherwise we've got a few weapon upgrades as well. Perhaps the one that I was most interested in seeing, the plasma rifle, hasn't been revealed here, but we've got a preview on the burst cannon and the Tau flamers. Burst cannons are now assault 6, strength 5, AP 0 and damage 1, so just basically gaining plus 50% shots up from assault 4 to assault 6. They're still certainly going to be hampered by not having any AP, but that's a pretty serious amount of weight of fire coming out of just one crisis suit now, and they'll get even more dangerous whenever you can combine them with a rule that gives them some AP, such as Montcar for the first few turns, provided you can get them in range. Tau flamers have also seen a small bump as well. They've basically become the same as Admech Cognis flamers with D6 plus 2 shots, again at 12 inches and automatically hitting the target as per normal. That is going to be significant. It'll be interesting to see whether or not people choose the flamer or the burst cannon for the anti-infantry suits. On average, the flamers will land you around about 5 or 6 auto hits at strength 4 now, and again they'll really like Montcar too, which will get them the AP -1 on the first few turns, and also I guess could help with getting them in range as well. They can still advance forward even if they've got other weapons and fire those other weapons normally. So certainly the light anti-infantry weapons have got a fair bit more dangerous, but it does remain to be seen whether or not these will get points bumps. Next up we have a couple of Wargear previews. It seems that every time they adjust Tau, they do tend to change and tweak what things like the multi-trackers and target locks do, and both of these have changed a little bit in the new codex. Previously, the multi-tracker was a bit of a bad upgrade. It allows you to reroll hit rolls of 1 against models with 5 or more models in the unit. It's not particularly impressive to be honest, particularly as you could get those hit rerolls really easily with a marker light, and the damage buff was pretty tiny even if it was meaningful. Now though, multi-trackers appear to give you exploding 6s to hit against any target that has 6 or more models in it. There's no more restriction about having to fire all of your same weapons against the same target, and they also clarify that you can't stack multiple multi-trackers on the same model, though I can't help but think that it's usually not going to be the best idea to stack multiple support systems when you could be taking more weapons. In any case, the upgrade is far better than it was, though it still seems kind of okay and not outstanding. It's typically going to add up to a plus 33% damage boost on your weapons against the relevant targets, presuming Tau Battlesuits are staying at Ballistic Skill 4+ and not jumping to Ballistic Skill 3 or something. I guess when the codex comes out, we'll have to see whether or not it makes more sense to take more upgrades or just take more guns. I can't help but think that the multi-tracker is going to have stiff competition with just taking more guns, which are good against hordes, but also good against everything else. In any case, even if they have done the maths right and they do outperform just taking more weapons on the suit, it is a little bit dependent on how many hordes there are in the meta. Quite a lot of armies in 40k do like to run their units in 5 models or less, so it's always going to be a bit of a situational upgrade, effective against some armies but not against all. It's perhaps a slightly similar story for the target lock as well. This one seems to have changed function quite a bit. Previously it was a small mobility boost. It allowed you to advance and shoot assault weapons without penalty, or advance and fire rapid fire or heavy weapons, though for those you would take the -1 penalty to hit. Again, perhaps not all that commonly taken compared with things like advanced targeting systems for extra AP and things. Now however, the target lock has changed to ignoring light cover, so maybe seems okay enough with anything that's got relatively low AP. As with the multi-tracker, it is kind of situational. It's not going to help you out every single time that you shoot, but in certain matchups that could be absolutely key. Say if you're playing against an army that has it army-wide like Raven Guard. I'm going to guess that this might mean that the advanced targeting system has either been changed or will cost more points, as that one just gives you flat extra AP across all your weapons, so that would usually outperform this, as you get the extra AP against light cover and negate it, and also against anyone who's out of cover too. Overall, both of them seem interesting. It's certainly no bad thing to get bonuses against hordes on crisis suits, or ignores light's cover on things like broadsides perhaps, but I think it's going to be hard to weigh them up too well until we can see the new prices for them and the weapons, and also any of the other bits of kit that have changed. Finally, we have a couple of interesting looking stratagems for the crisis suits, and both of these have a small hint as to other things in the codex as well. The first one is the reincarnation of Move Shoot Move with a stratagem called Strike and Fade, kind of similar to the Eldari Fire and Fade one. It seems that you have to use this at the start of your shooting phase, target one jetpack unit, that unit shoots, and then you immediately make a normal move of up to 6 inches after that. It's going to be 1 command point for most Battlesuit jetpack units, and it only goes up to 2 CP on really big units, things that have 6 or more models, not including drones. As I'm sure some people can remember from when Tau had this army-wide, it can be a really quite annoying mechanic. You jump out of cover, fire off a whole load of powerful guns, then jump back into cover so you can't be seen. Probably for the best that it isn't entirely army-wide. I think this will perhaps incentivise its use on your most powerful units, have them shooting each turn and then dropping back. Currently you can use this on quite big suits as well, things like Riptides, so that could be pretty interesting and highly annoying to have these massive suits be able to shoot and then fall back and not be shot. It's not necessarily the only use for the stratagem though. You could just fire and get an extra 6 inches worth of movement. Sometimes that's going to be all important for getting to objectives or getting in the right place for secondaries, and could perhaps easily be worth a command point. I must admit I'm not the biggest fan of shoots but can't be shot mechanics in 40k. I guess at least this one you've got the opportunity to either flank the unit and try and get around the cover, and even so it does cost you 1 command point a turn, so it's not exactly free for the Tau player. I guess we'll have to wait and see what big combos you can use this on. It could be absolutely devastating, or it could be fairly underwhelming. One interesting thing from the stratagem though was excluding drone models in the unit. That could potentially imply that drones might well be part of the unit now, rather than hovering alongside them and breaking off into their own separate units at the start of the game. I guess we'll have to wait and see for that. It could make a bit of a weird unit with different toughness values in it, and I guess the stratagem could just be relating to if you're using it on a squad of tactical drones, but I think any changes to how drones are used in the codex is going to be really interesting to Tau commanders. Finally, there's a more expensive stratagem called Drop Threat Acquisition for 2 or 3 command points, and this one's basically a big damage buff to Battlesuits coming out of reserve, either normally via their Manta Strike special rule, or presumably another way to get them there, which is to have one unit do a homing beacon action, which we don't know very much about yet. In any case, the deep striking Battlesuit bomb gets 4 rerolls to hit for that unit, so a pretty massive increase in firepower on a very threatening unit. Now this certainly looks very solid, but I would bear in mind how many command points it costs. It's 2 CP normally, or 3 command points if you have 4 or more models in the unit, so you are giving up a fairly hefty whack of command points to be able to get more Battlesuit fire. We don't know exactly how big Battlesuit units are going to be able to get in the new codex, whether or not the bodyguards will still go all the way up to 9, but say if we had a biggish unit of 6 dropping in, 3 command points would have the equivalent of 3 extra models worth of damage. So say if everyone was armed with 2 fusion blasters, it'd be the equivalent of another 6 fusion blasters worth of shots. I guess that could well be worth it in the right scenarios, and I feel like this is one of those stratagems that's really going to profit from layering a whole ton of special rules on one unit. Things like character auras, marker light buffs, maybe the benefits from Montcar or Kauyon, and then just get massively more damage output via this stratagem. I'm going to guess it's going to be kind of situational, but it rarely hurts too much to have another way of converting command points into direct damage. Finally, I do find that homing beacon action interesting. Maybe it's a way to allow a deep strike closer to enemies. Certainly gives me an impression of a tower model somewhere on the board doing the action to call down a squad of crisis suits and obliterate the enemy at close range with heavy firepower. So overall, I think that's a rather good haul for the Tau Empire. Good to see Battlesuits getting a bit of a tune-up. It is always a bit sad for a faction when one of their most iconic units really isn't all that great. Hopefully this can allow them to be a bit more general purpose, as opposed to just one enormous unit buffed by Farsight and friends. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more. I'll certainly try and keep these regular 40k videos coming, and I'll bring any updates of the Tau Empire Codex as soon as I get them. I'm most certainly looking to reviewing the Codex in full when we have it out in early 2022. Finally, if you'd like to help support the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page, and you can find that down in the video description below. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, including seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some really big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, then the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.